What is up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 98. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined, as always, by Jeremy Nygaard with his crystal clear audio. Jeremy, how are you? It's episode
I'm
98.
Good. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I'm good, though. I sound good. I look good. I feel good. All the things. How are you doing over there in your neck of the woods?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Enjoying playoff baseball. Settled into the fall schedule. About to start traveling for work, which is not my favorite thing to do, but it is what it is. Yeah, man, I got no complaints whatsoever. Life is good. What are we gonna do for this 100th episode? That's my question for you. I feel like we need to do something like legit slightly different than just coming on here, me complaining at you and you yammering on at me. So what you
I think
got for episode?
We'll add Theo just making some noises like he did during the trade deadline. Here we go.
Do you really want me to do that? Otherwise, we'd be Twins Off Daily Prospect Edition.
There you go.
I don't know. I have no idea. I have no good ideas.
If anyone who's listening to this has a good idea for what we should do for our 100th episode, which is coming up in a couple of weeks here, let us know. Also, Jeremy, and other weird news, I still there's a mystery to solve, and I really cannot. This has piqued my curiosity so much. Little sneak peek behind the podcast. We have a very, very established pattern when it comes to people downloading and listening to the show. So the day the episode goes live, we record at nighttime, late at night. The next day is day one where the episode is up. We get we're always living in a very specific number of downloads on that day. And then the following day, it's half of that. The following day, it's half of that. And it kind of trickles off until we record a brand new one. But this week, we had day one, normal. And then we kind of halved again. And then suddenly on day 4 of our cycle, we had this massive influx of downloads out of nowhere. And I need an explanation for it. We must have been mentioned by somebody on something. I got to know, and it's eating at me, man.
So that was my theory. And then when I just logged in to look, it's every episode was downloaded.
Weird.
So it wasn't like, hey, you guys should, listen to episode 97. It was there was a handful of ones that had more downloads, but then it was episode 48, Life Without Jamie, downloaded 3 times.
That's weird.
Yeah. So someone was maybe trying to find something that one of us said and downloaded all the episodes.
Or
through it. Or your mom just downloaded everything.
Or someone's been packed off to Antarctica or an offshore drilling gig, and they're downloading 100 episodes to keep them going on the long nights at sea. That's what I got. That's all I got.
Or put them to sleep the long nights at sea.
I would definitely say we're more in the put them to sleep category versus comfort category. But hey, if you are that person downloading all these episodes of us, give us a shout.
Let us know.
We'd like to know. We'd just like to know.
We would like to know. Our curiosity has been piqued. Speaking of which, ways that you can support us and get in touch with the show, other than downloading every single episode individually, you can like and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Find all of our stuff at YouTube. The handle there is @Destination the Show. If you want to send us a question, of which we will only be answering one this week because I forgot to put out a call for them, you can do that on Twitter. The handle is @DTS_pod1. On Blue Sky @Destination the Show, or email destinationtheshow@gmail.com. that I should definitely check more often. Jeremy, are you ready to talk about the Minnesota Twins 2025 draft class?
Yes, I'm so ready.
You're ready. You're as prepared as you always are, which means minimally. Someone maximally. Someone asked us a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, have you guys kind of reviewed how folks who got drafted in 2025 have done? And thank you so much for that suggestion, because it is a great idea for an entire podcast episode. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to walk through the Twins 2025 class. We're going to talk through the debuts, probably focusing mostly on the top guys. We'll talk about some of the non-debuts too. And we'll kind of ask some questions about these guys and their initial performance and what that all means. Shall we jump in?
Let's go.
Let's talk about Merrick Houston. So Merrick Houston, the Twins' first-round pick, 16th overall, signed out of Wake Forest, a signing bonus of just under $4.5 million. Before we talk about Houston, Jeremy, I think we can now safely speculate. That Merrick Houston was not necessarily the guy the Twins wanted to take with this pick. I think, and this is conjecture, this is not me sharing information. I think it's reasonable to assume that the Twins were in on a cluster of prep infielders, most of whom were selected right ahead of where the Twins picked. Two names I would pay particular attention to: Daniel Pierce, a shortstop out of Georgia, who you were particularly fond of, if I remember, who was taken by the Rays, I want to say at 14. And then Gavin Feen, a prospect who I was particularly fond of, more of a offensive profile over a defensive profile, taken by the Rangers, I want to say at 12. The Twins landed Merrick Houston at 16. Here's how he did. He saw two levels in what we could describe as a solid pro debut, and it looked very different at Fort Myers to Cedar Rapids, I think it's fair to say. So 12 games at each level. At Fort Myers, he hit 374, 24, 444, good for a 149 WRC plus, walked 8.5% of the time, struck out 22% of the time. Moved to Cedar Rapids, did hit his first professional home run down the stretch there. But in 12 games at Cedar Rapids, hit 152, 220, 239, walking just 5.9% of the time. Strikeout rate was better, 15.7% of the time, a WRC plus of 33. So overall impressions, Jeremy, of Houston's debut. Obviously, he trailed off at the end of the year there. Any concern there? What do you make of how he started life as a pro?
Yeah, I think, I've said a number of times, I don't make a ton of pro debuts, whether really good or really bad. He came from the SEC. It's a long season, very competitive.
ACC.
And ACC. And certainly held his own. Got to Cedar Rapids where it's like, this is a sneak peek of what you're going to do next year.
Yep.
And, overall with a less than 20% strikeout rate, seven stolen bases, didn't walk a ton, didn't really hit for power, but made it through his short season debut healthy, right?
Yep.
And we'll get a winter now to prepare for his first spring training. I'll be curious to see if he gets like a non-roster invite, just because I think with the team being younger, it may make some sense to just have him there earlier, right? I don't think there's any wild ideas that he's going to make his big league debut, but to just get him there, he's going to, I think, looking at that position, Brooks Lee's going to get the first opportunity, right? Culpepper is going to be a step and a half behind.
Yep.
And then a step and a half behind that, you're going to have Merrick Houston. And I think long term, he's going to be a shortstop. Whether he can be a big league regular on a playoff team, that all remains to be seen. But I think given what his ability is, and given what today's managerial news is, like, Merrick Houston maybe fits the Nick Punto mold better than most.
Come on,
right?
come on.
So, but no, there's nothing to be discouraged about. Numbers obviously weren't ideal, but when you can get your feet wet, stay healthy, and then have an opportunity to kind of launch into your first full season, I think it's as good as anybody could want.
I'm going to take a smidge of a different angle to talking about Houston. And while I agree with you that there's nothing necessarily to be discouraged about, if you were a Merrick Houston doubter, I think you could fit his performance at Cedar Rapids to your narrative of why you have doubts about his profile, right? So the scouting report coming out of Wake was exceptional defender. I mean, we saw, and I think, and I'm curious to other folks' opinion on this, Tell me I'm wrong that Twins player development account started posting way more defensive highlights in the last month or so of the season from the minors. Houston looks super slick with the glove, but the concerns on the scouting reports were, is there going to be much extra base impact? And that's fine if there's not, because the hit tool is solid, the bat to ball skills are solid, he can steal, he can run, he can certainly defend, but an OPS of whatever it was at Cedar Rapids.
Well, 680 overall.
680 overall, 459 at Cedar Rapids. And of course, that's a tiny sample. I think that's going to be really like the most basic metric to kind of track his performance early on in 2026. And if he can just be like 700 to 750 throughout his minor league career, you're going to take it. And I think this maybe kind of affirms my view of him. And I think maybe why we felt a little, not disappointed in the pick, but that it was maybe not the most exciting. I think maybe this is like a kind of low ceiling, everyday regular type of ceiling for Houston. And we'll see obviously how that plays out, but the OPS and the extra base impact is going to factor into that a lot.
So I will say this, the guy that and it's not a fair comparison, I don't think, but I like comparisons. You hate comparisons, so I'm going to make them whatever I can. Like his build, skinny, like tall and skinny, right? Fast, like that's to me, I think a Trey Turner, right?
Interesting.
Who's developed into one of the premier players in all of baseball. Wasn't, I mean, he was pretty good this year. But if you look back at when he was in low A at age 21 in 2014 and 105 plate appearances, and Houston had right around there. His OPS was 606, right? And so that was just part of his full season. He ended up in Fort Wayne and had almost 1,000 OPS. But like just that sample size, there are players he hit one home run. Right now he went from there to the Arizona Fall League and then was in AAA the next year. So he was kind of on a faster track and was a more highly touted prospect to begin with. And I have no like crazy ideas that Merrick Houston will someday be Trey Turner, but like it's going to take some time to develop when your tools are more speed and hit over power, speed, hit, and defense, right? Over power. So there's certainly hope, but yeah, I don't disagree with your idea that you can fit this lack of strength into a narrative that maybe this isn't the most exciting draft pick.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it shakes out. And I certainly think like the front office talked about the need to get more athletic, right? And they were referring, of course, their major league roster. But the Twins are starting to have guys in their system throughout on the hitting side that really check those boxes. And I think Houston is a really good example of that. Sidebar on him, his brother Graham just committed to LSU. He's one of the top prep prospects for 2027. So another one to keep an eye out for. Okay, we'll move through a couple of kind of non-debuts or marginal debuts. Comp A, the Twins had a Comp A pick. They took Alabama right-handed pitcher Riley Quick, like 6'6", already up to 99 with 2 different fastball shapes. Has been through and rehabbed from his Tommy John. The Alabama staff were really careful with getting him back into game action. Outstanding athlete, recruited as like a 4-star offensive lineman by many of the best football programs in the country. So nothing to report on him because I think we knew, coming off TJ that he definitely wasn't going to debut until 2026. But Jeremy, like, what is your excitement level to see Riley Quick in 2026? He's got to be up there on the list, no?
Yeah, I think whenever you add a super high ceiling pitcher with a decently high floor, there's reason to be excited because you could not even have to squint real hard to say Quick is potentially a like top of the rotation starter, right? And we could maybe say that about the Charlie Sotos of the world and the prep pitchers of the world that are really high ceiling guys. But there's a lot of levels of outcome that aren't that. And when you take a guy out of the SEC who's had success, who is everything if you built your prototypical pitcher, it looks something like Riley Quick, right? And so I think there's certainly reasons to be excited. I would guess probably starts his season in Fort Myers just because it's warmer there, and ends the season in Fort Myers unless he's absolutely dominant, and then potentially could see AA. But I'm curious about the workload. 62 innings, I think, last year, and struck out a lot of guys. So, probably not a super quick ascension unless he just absolutely dominates. And I think that's okay, because when you look at the pitchers that the Twins have lined up, whether they have Lopez and Ryan or not, they have a lot of starting pitching depth, and Quick can kind of fit into the back of that. Hopefully, when the Twins are competitive.
Absolutely. We'll move on to their second round pick, Jeremy. This is a debuted, but very briefly. Quentin Young, I know, is a prospect that you're excited about. This is the nephew of Delman and Dimitri Young, prep player out of Oaks Christian High School in California, taken with their second round pick, 54th overall, signed for a slot value, which was $1.761 million, listed as an 18-year-old at 6'6", 225. Got into a handful of games at Fort Myers. It was 22 plate appearances, so who cares? I think the scouting report notes to know leading up to the draft, right, where this is as good as it gets raw power wise. It might be it's 70, 80 type raw power. The question is, how much is he going to access that? A lot of the scouting reports coming into the draft were grounded in we've seen a lot of improvement in Quentin Young's process. So the approach he's taking in his at-bats, much improved. The contact rates that he's putting up in high school ball in Southern California, which is obviously pretty competitive, much, much improved. I think we're probably agreed that he's eventually going to move off shortstop just because of the sheer size. The arm is otherworldly good. He could easily slide over to third, I think, and look really good there. But he's another guy I know that you maybe have ranked a little bit higher than me just because of that kind of tendency and leaning towards upside.
Yeah, he's got a ton of it. Unlike Quick, who we said kind of has that higher floor and higher ceiling, Young is all about ceiling. And when you take someone with his profile, there's a significant risk of, hey, it was great to see him, and now he's kind of maxed out and he's having no success in high A or AA. But the tools are certainly there. You mentioned moving off shortstop. I don't think anybody really has the wild dream that he's going to stay there. He played 5 games this year, I think 3 at shortstop, 2 at third base. If third base doesn't work, certainly right field could, and maybe first base could too, because that's kind of the profile that he has. So he stepped in the batter's box 22 times. 9 of those times he walked back to the dugout after striking out, right? So we're going to talk about another year, a full year at Fort Myers, I would assume. Then probably a full year at Cedar Rapids. And,
for sure.
And
the Brandon Winokur path, right?
Right. And then by 2028, we hope that there's a chance that he looks like a high minor leagues player. And that's certainly okay. When you have depth and not just numbers, but quality depth, quality, quantity, you have all of these things. The taking a shot with Quentin Young is exactly what good organizations do. The difference between good organizations and great organizations are great organizations and develop these shots into the Zaire Hopes of the world and turn them into the Michael Bushes of the world. And so that's kind of what we still need to see. But I think there's certainly hope, because Quentin Young is one that the kids would call tooled up.
Tooled up, that's right. The thing I can't wait for, and we talked about this briefly when he debuted, the moment he gets hold of his first home run, dude, I mean, really gets hold of one. I mean, it's hard to hit home runs in Fort Myers, but it's not going to be cheap. And I'm so excited. That one's going to go super viral real quick. If you have a chance and you're bored and you have nothing to do on these long Minnesota or Wisconsin winter nights, just watch Quentin Young's BP from the MLB Combine. I mean, he was parking balls like 20, 30 rows back without that much effort. Super impressive. Twins third-round pick, Jeremy James Ellwanger, another high-octane arm, signed for an even million out of Dallas Baptist, the same school where Dason Hill was committed before he signed with the Twins. DBU numbers in 2025, pitched 63.1 innings, struck out 13.5 per nine, a 33% K rate. I mean, this is like a fastball that's up to 99, 100. He really has a feel for spin. It was a 3.98 ERA, a 3.07 FIP. The issues are, can he throw enough strikes? It was 5.5 walks per nine. But again, like, you're looking at high octane arms in these first few selections from the Twins, and that does feel maybe like a little bit different to previous years. What do you think about Ellwanger's prospects for 2026?
Yeah, certainly different, but kind of echoing the same thing I said about Young. When you have the depth to take a shot, like this is kind of one of those fun, let's throw the dart and see if it sticks. The strike throwing ability, I think, is cause for concern. But the Twins, if you missed it, they traded like all their relievers. So there's certainly a need for those types of, hey, and you turn on the TV during, August, you're like, hey, let's watch this random Rockies and Pirates game that nobody cares about because the teams are awful. And they have guys trotting in from the bullpen. They're throwing 102 miles an hour.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, these are guys that I've never even heard of. And so if Ellwanger can throw it over enough and doesn't do anything more, like that's still a very valuable handful of traits. Again, with the higher ceiling, and that's something that I think we're gonna say a lot. But yeah, whenever you can throw an arm in that's already talented and just needs more refinement, I think that's certainly a departure from what we have seen, but can be fun because that's where guys just pop up and you're like, oh, okay, let's do it. And if he develops into a starting pitcher, he'll get every opportunity to do that. Great. If he can't stick and becomes a reliever, there's need for that as well.
Absolutely. I expect him to come in with a revamped secondary arsenal. That's my call for Ellwanger. He really has an affinity for spin. I guarantee the Twins are going to tinker with breaking ball shapes, configuration of his arsenal, whatever. He's going to come up with some interesting stuff. That's going to be more appointment viewing in Fort Myers.
So what you're telling me is it's like, let's just make him a sweeper guy?
I don't know, because like I'd have to look back at his chart, which I have from his college pitching, but if I'm remembering, he was like a really north-south like vertical movement guy. So I don't know if they would add a sweeper there. We'll come back to Ellwanger because I haven't written him up yet, but I have written up the next guy. So let's talk about him real quick. Fourth round selection, Jason Reitz out of Oregon, 6 foot. I can't even say it without laughing. He is listed at 6'11", 215 pounds. And I posted a picture of him on Blue Sky the other day because for anyone who's interested, I've started posting prospect write-ups on a little online store, just like digital things. I put Jason Reitz up as my first one as a proof of concept. It's $1 if you're interested. And you can find in that all of his like advanced college data, what he was throwing, how hard he was throwing it, the movement on all his pitches, what I think the Twins will try and do with him. So if you want to support your local writer, you can find that on Twitter or Blue Sky and like a pinned tweet. Jason Reitz is 6'11", and I posted his picture on Blue Sky, and 4 replies were like, "That's AI. That's AI. That's AI. That's not a real picture." He does look like otherworldly, Jeremy, don't you think? Like that's just like such a unusual height for a baseball player to be.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with him, but you've watched Victor Wembanyama play basketball.
Yeah, there you go.
Now let's take Victor Wembanyama and put him on like Naked and Afraid, where you can't or you don't eat for like 30 days, right? And then take 20 more pounds off. That's what this guy looks like. Like it's crazy, and he's gonna put weight on, and it's gonna be like he could put on 30 pounds and maybe not even be noticeable. And so this is one of those development stories that it's like we have no idea how this is going to end. It may not end well, but this is worth a shot, because if it does, it could be super fun.
I will just say, as a skinny guy myself, being 6'11" and that thin, you definitely stand out a lot more, because when you think about guys who have been, close to 7 feet tall in Major League Baseball history, your John Roush's, your Mark Hendrickson's, your Randy Johnson's, they had some bulk to them. This kid doesn't have any, and he looks thinner than me. And I say this as a fellow skinny guy. But when you're that tall and you don't have that much build to you, you're going to stand out more. So people, I'm sorry your eyes are so untrained with how blurred AI is, but that's not AI. That kid is just really tall and really thin. So hopefully he'll tack on a few and get up to 95.
Theo, how tall are you?
5'11".
He's 1 foot taller than you and doesn't weigh an ounce more. Like,
no, it's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, they're skinny, and then there's add a foot to skinny, and add your pound. Like, and that's when guys are taller. Like that's torso. Like that's a thicker area. This isn't a neck. This is So let's see how he develops, because he's really tall and really skinny.
So there's two things I want to say about Reese real quick that I think is just like really interesting, like from a pitching perspective. So one is, we'll make the comp to Bailey Ober, who's 6'8", 6'9". When he was drafted in the 12th round in 2017, his fastball was 88 to 90, somewhere in that range. Reese has been up to 98 with his fastball. His 90th percentile fastball is 95.4 miles an hour. So we're not talking about some soft tossing dude. We're talking about a guy who throws really freaking hard. And then the other thing that I think is interesting, and this is just like laying down a prediction. So we touched on this briefly last week. Trey Savage has come up and had all kinds of success. He has this extremely vertical release point. He's more over the top than Reese, but because Reese is so tall, essentially they have the same effect at release, which is that you're releasing the ball from the moon and throwing it down towards the plate, right? So Reese's release point is like 7 feet 2 inches. He already has a sinker that he threw like 26 of in his college season. The Twins are going to make him throw that like 20% of the time, and they're going to make him throw it at the bottom of the strike zone. And that effect of coming from like a 7'2" release height down to the bottom of the zone is going to create one of the steepest like vertical attack angles of any pitch in baseball. It might even be the steepest. So it's truly like a weird outlier release point experiment. So my Reitz call is going to be sinkers at the bottom of the zone, thrown like 95, 96, and it's just going to be like a super weird. You're going to see a lot of weird swings and awkwardness from hitters trying to react to that because they've never seen it.
So here's my other question. Here's my question, and maybe you can answer this. So release point is a vertical number, right? But now we also can talk about extension. And so the physics part of baseball velocity is that velocity is basically a measurement out of the hand. And then as the ball moves, it doesn't pick up speed, it slows down.
Correct.
So if it's a 98 mile an hour fastball coming from 60 feet 6 inches from the plate, that's different than a 98 mile an hour fastball that's coming from say 58 feet from the plate. And so do we have figures on where his his extension? Okay, give me some of that stuff.
So Yeah, so what you're saying is exactly right, Jeremy, and there's even a measure for that, and it's called perceived velocity. And basically, if you're above a certain threshold of average, an average extension is typically around 6 feet for a major league pitcher. Really, really elite extension is like towards the back end of 7 feet. If you're above average in your extension, your perceived velocity is faster than the velocity out of the hand because of exactly what you're describing, right? The pitcher is releasing the ball, and the Twins value that. Pablo Lopez has elite extension. Bailey Ober has elite extension. Chris Paddock actually had elite extension. Most of their guys do. The common like pitfall or like misnomer is that extension and height aren't actually related. Reitz just so happens to have really poor extension. His extension's only like he has really poor extension. It's like 5.5 feet, 5.6 feet, which is about half a foot below average. So he's not getting anything extra from that. So if you go onto Twitter and you search Jason Reitz pitching, whatever, if you can get an open side view of him, so like his chest is facing towards you as he throws, clock his stride length and you'll be able to see it. That's what a short stride looks like. And his velocity is coming from a really, really quick arm, as opposed to really excellent extension is where you get into your back leg when you're throwing. So everything you said is 100% true, except your hypothesis was wrong. Reese doesn't have good extension. He has poor extension. So
I'm
not
over
going to
it. Well, but I feel like that's something that you can work on, right? I mean, I would guess. Sorry to talk over you, but
you're good.
Like Pablo, like he's strong in his from knees to his waist, like there's strength there, so you can get into that back leg.
Yeah.
I could see why one that's tall and has thighs the size of my ankles would have a hard time getting into that part of their body. But right, so as you get stronger and you add good weight and add muscle, your extension should improve.
I think that's a solid bet. And here's, I think, maybe like the easiest way to think about it. We tend to think of, and it makes sense, but we tend to think of as like good extension comes from height. Think of it instead as good extension comes from being a good mover. If you're an elite mover, that means like you're flexible, you're strong, you're supple, all of those things. You're going to have better extension than someone who's like me, who's,
struggling to touch my describe the opposite of me. I'm none of those things.
Okay, dude. Other non-debuters, Matt Barr. I think just for the mystery factor, he's probably tied with Riley Quick as like my most intrigue around a debutante. JUCO arm, let's go, because smart teams do that. Who is committed to Tennessee. I believe it's going to be 19 for the majority of the season. If you look at his strikeout numbers from like Sunny Niagara, wherever he was pitching, I mean, it's just like actually unbelievable. But he's another guy who is throwing 97, 98 miles per hour. Twins are one of the best teams in Major League Baseball at adding velo. He's going to be up touching 100 soon. Cannot wait to watch him. Anything you want to add on Barr, or if not, we can move on to some of these kind of mid-round hitters that we have not. Really
I think the thing with a lot of these pitchers is we're not going to say anything new that we haven't talked about before, right? So I'm certainly okay moving on.
Okay, next up, and this was like, I guess I just didn't expect this pick. 6th round, Bruin Agbayani, son of Benny, left-handed hitting. Well, I think we should call him a second baseman. 18-year-old second baseman out of Hawaii, out of Honolulu, signed for $380,000. Got a few games at Fort Myers, just 5 games. Walked 30% of the time, no big deal. His profile is very much going to be a like at the moment at least. Really, it's like a sweet left-handed swing, line drive, doubles power type profile. Just does everything well. Maybe no standout tool. But I think that was maybe a little bit of a departure getting a prep bet in the 6th round. and you can correct me, Jeremy, if I'm off base, but I don't know that we've seen the Twins take a prep hitter quite that late or quite that in the middle rounds for a while. So Agbayani was interesting.
Yeah, none come to mind. Fits the profile that the Twins like to draft the bloodlines, right? And so there's certainly some background here. Signed late, I think he was like a deadline sign, and so the debut surprised me at all. Got in at just a handful of games, similar to Young. Had 23 plate appearances, but walked to first 7 times. So I would guess it's going to be the same sort of timeline, which I think Fort Myers next year, chance to snip Cedar Rapids late in the year, probably mostly Cedar Rapids year after that. But I would guess there's probably a little more polish here that the ceiling's maybe not Quentin Young high, but the floor is probably a little bit higher, despite the fact that there's not a lot of, I think, defensive projection here, right? I mean, it's
fair.
Relatively, we're going to get what we're going to get. So I do like the pick, and again, it's a wait and see approach.
Okay, let's move on to their 7th round pick. This is an interesting one, Jake. So they took a cluster of kind of like college bats in the middle here, and we really haven't talked about any of them. So we can at least give like a little bit of an overview and then kind of get your thoughts here. They took Jacob McCombs in the, what round are we in? 7th. He did debut 209th overall pick, signed for $280,000 out of UC Irvine. That was his one and only season there. Drafted as a 20-year-old and debuted at Fort Myers as a 20-year-old. Very interesting offensive profile in college. One of these guys were like allergic to taking a walk, I think, because he could hit everything at any level he had ever played at. So at UC Irvine, who was one of the best mid-major programs in the country last year, and they're always really good. So that is not a program to be sniffy about. He hit 352, 446, 635, a 162 WRC plus while only walking 4% of the time. Struck out just 11% of the time, 13 bombs. Got into a sprinkle of games for Fort Myers. I think a lot of these guys, and this is just a function of where we are in the draft, you're not going to see a ton of defensive value. Like he's a corner outfielder. And I suppose, and Jeremy, you can correct me if this isn't your attitude towards it. Out of all these guys we're about to mention, I guess the approach is just like hope one of them hits enough to like make something of themselves at AA and see how it goes. Is that fair?
Yeah. Right. I mean, you look at kind of the state of the minor leagues, and there's a lot of guys that I think would kind of be plugged into that same thing. And then all of a sudden a Kyler Fedko just emerges. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's athletic. There's bat talent there. Again, defensive questions, but not huge questions. Draft eligible sophomore, so someone on the younger side of things, and just get him in the system and see what happens. The Twins have always drafted SoCal heavy, right? I mean, it's been a place that they know really well. I think they probably have a pretty established relationships with a lot of coaches and a lot of club guys and a lot of people that are on the circuit. So taking him in the 7th round and signing him for a couple thousand under slot, it's worth it, and we'll see what happens.
Yep. 8th round, Ryan Sprock out of Elon. The puns write themselves, Jeremy. Sprocket, a sprocket from Ryan Sprock. See what it is there.
Gotcha.
5'10". Yeah, fair. Fair. 5'10", 205, listed as a third baseman, outfielder. Sprock is someone who got off to if you want someone who got off to a hot start, he got into more games than anybody. 2 home runs in his first 23 games, 130 WRC plus, walked 16% of the time, struck out just 22%, hit 257, 395, 386. Here's your intel on Sprock. That is a Destination the Show exclusive. I believe the Twins are going to have him catch next year. So that's my nugget.
That's interesting. He did have a really good debut season. I think had the second most at bats of anybody, second most plate appearances of anybody they draft, third most,
Yep.
and looked the part. So that is interesting because when they drafted him, he was kind of a two-way dude, right? He was a pitcher.
Yep.
They announced him as a third baseman. They have done this in the past with, it was a while ago, like the Tyler Grimes era. Tyler Grimes was drafted as a shortstop, and they tried him at catcher. There was somebody else in that same draft class, but we're talking, I don't know how many years ago.
You're
17
so
years
old.
ago. And so they've done this before, and if it plays out, great. The thing is, if you try to develop him as a catcher and it doesn't work, you can always move him around. Kenley Jansen was a pitcher before he was a catcher, and or a catcher before he was a pitcher.
There you
And
go.
so if Sprock can't do the catching thing, he's got the arm where maybe you put him on the other side of the battery. So it's that would be an interesting development if it takes, but one that's certainly worth the risk.
Yep. Round 9, Sprock's college teammate Justin Mitrovic. This is a lower down the draft class arm who I think is really interesting. We'll just roll through some of his stats from his 2025 season because he did not debut like most of the guys. 89.1 innings pitched, 4.23 ERA, 3.56 FIP. Strikeout rate was a little low, 21.5%. Solid control, 9.3% walk rate. Mitrovic's changeup is super legit. It's one of those fade heavy changeups. I think it averaged about 17 inches of horizontal break, which is just a ton. So that's something that I think they're going to build around. Mitrovic is one who I'd be interested in the lower levels in 2026. Anything to add on him before we move on to other hitters?
Nope. Let's talk about the next one that made his debut.
Okay. Shea Robinson, 10th rounder, out of Illinois State, 299th overall pick, signed for $147,500. Made his debut at Fort Myers. If I'm remembering correctly, he really struggled to stay healthy in college. 3 seasons at Illinois State. In his final season, he walked 18.5% of the time, struck out 16.5% of the time, 10 home runs. Just got into a handful of games at Fort Myers. He did?
He was hurt. Oh. Yeah, I'm almost positive he was hurt for Fort Myers. That's why, because he came up with all those other guys. He came up like the same time as Sprock in Houston, and I'm pretty sure he spent the remainder of the season on the injured list.
Oh man, you bummed me out, dude.
Of that, I am almost positive.
I don't know how that one snuck by me. Okay, next round. Ryan Daniels.
They placed him on before we go to Ryan Daniels. Robinson was placed on the injured list on August 6th, activated on September 30th, which I believe is after the season, right? He was out for the year.
Got it. Oh, that's a bummer. Ryan Daniels is the 11th round pick out of UConn. Jeremy, we always talk about how much the Twins love Southern California, especially you, because you're locked in on that. They've taken so many UConn guys. And Theo knows this too, because he wrote a great story about UConn teammates playing for the Saints. Who was that, Theo? Fedko?
Winkle, Fedko, and Prado. And unfortunately, they cut Prado like a week. Days. Yeah. No. I think them cutting Prado was really bad because granted, he was a utility guy and didn't always have the best bat to ball skills, but he could get on base. He could draw so many good walks, and that he had an on base percentage just below 400. And even at that level, you don't want to cut a guy like that. So yeah. The Twins kind of ruined that story for me by cutting a guy who, was picked up by Pittsburgh and signed to a minor league deal within 2 weeks of getting cut. So that was bad on them. Anyway, back to this guy.
And then his signing scout found out that he was cut from your article.
Stop. Is that true?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I thought I told you that.
No, you told me something else related to a different story.
Oh man.
Oh, no, I'm pretty sure. I have to go through my text, but I'm pretty sure that's true.
Wow. Jeez, Theo.
There was something. There was another part of that story that you let me know about related to that scout, but it wasn't that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
Sounds like
I'll take your word for it, but dang, I'm sorry.
He's
You
like,
have to hear that from me.
God dang it, Theo's breaking my heart. I'm like, hey, you're not the first.
This is not my intentional. Won't be the last.
Oh man, we're off the rails. Okay, Ryan Daniels, real quick. Twins like guys out of UConn. Also hurt. However, I do want to call out Ryan Daniels' performance at UConn as a junior because it was otherworldly. This is not normal. 365, 476, 744, a 175 WRC plus with a 16% walk rate and a 16% strikeout rate and 18 home runs out of nowhere. As a sophomore, he hit 3 home runs. As a junior, he hit 18. And so I just think that maybe points at a tendency, and I think we've talked about this, Jeremy, with guys like Tanner Schobel or whoever. If you see a guy with a breakout, they will often target that and say like, oh, maybe we kind of caught lightning in a bottle when a guy figured something out. Right. So that was the kind of interesting nugget I had on Daniels was suddenly he developed power as if from nowhere.
Now let's go opposite and talk about the next guy.
Who is the next guy?
Colton Smith.
Colton Smith. Hold on. I got things to pull up on Colton Smith. Okay, so Colton Smith. Dude, I'm all over the place now. Colton Smith, 12th rounder out of the University of Georgia. I don't have his numbers in front of me.
So he got over slot. He counted towards the bonus pool of 50,000. So signed for 200,000, 50,000 counts against the pool. It did not have a great season after having a decent season
at Georgia. Yeah. So the Colton, okay, that's what I was looking for. The Colton Smith draw, I think, is the slider. Like I think we talk about this a decent amount with pitchers in the mid and late rounds. It's like target a trait. Maybe it's a release point thing. Maybe it's one really good pitch. Maybe they can spin the ball really well, whatever. Colton Smith's thing is he has a really good power slider, throws it really hard. I know this is crazy. Slider's been up to like 92. That's going to be the thing with him. It will be he was like a decently talked about arm in college. And so that's interesting. The kind of poor performance in 2025 because he was with Wes Johnson, formerly of this parish at Georgia. So we'll be interested to see how he does when he debuts. How about round 13, Jeremy? Don't see a ton of pitchers drafted out of Harvard.
He's gonna pitch for like a year, and then he's gonna run the pitching school
there
and the regular school and everything else because he'll be the smartest guy in the room. Callum Fang. Tell us all about him.
Callum Fang. Sorry, I gotta pull up his numbers real quick. It's not seamless today. I'm still working back to form. Okay, so Callum Fang out of Harvard. 64 innings exactly in each of his last 2 collegiate seasons. Had a big fall off in the strikeout rate from 2024 to 2025. Still pretty respectable numbers. A 4.11 FIP last season, 22% strikeout rate, 7.1% walk rate. I think this is much more so that more old school Twins arm archetype of someone who's going to fill up the zone and has a well-developed arsenal. We talked earlier about and like Reitz and Quick and Barr, they took flamethrowers. Callum Fang is not a flamethrower guy at all. His fastball maxed out at 93.3 in his junior year of college. However, he pounds his zone. He has an interesting arsenal. He throws, fastball, cutter, curveball, changeup. Like he just already has 5 or 6 pitches in the bag. So he's the guy that if you can get him to velo camp, add 1 or 2 ticks on everything, and you go from 93.3 to like 95.3, suddenly that's like the Zebby Matthews kind of blueprint where you have an extreme strike thrower that you're adding stuff to, as opposed to some of these earlier arms where you have extreme stuff and you're hoping they can throw enough strikes to thrive. So that's the book on Callum Fang.
And a low risk in round 13.
Absolutely. Merritt Jones, Jeremy, is most interesting. So he was taken out of Utah. I actually don't think I have data on Jones. That's really annoying. Jones is interesting because the Twins drafted him in 2 consecutive years. They drafted him in 2024. He didn't sign, went back to school. And then they drafted him again in 2025, and they said, Merritt Jones, you are going to be a Minnesota Twin, whether you like it or not. You're going
to throw 2 innings. 2 innings this year. That's it. That's all we're going to give you.
Hey, you know what? That's a lot more than almost every other guy that we've spoken about so far. So Merritt Jones should be grateful.
Yeah. So I mean, I find that kind of weird. You get 1 appearance, you get a save. Like, were they short arms and he was just down there and they're like,
it's interesting.
Go for it. You know what I mean? Like that to me is weird. So there's the one of the guys we have yet to talk about makes sense that he threw more. The Merritt Jones thing and another guy later, like 2 innings. Not much to make out of that. Struck out 1, gave up a hit, got through 6 guys.
Okay, Merritt Jones, Arsenal, for those interested. 4-seamer, 2-seamer, cutter, slider, curveball, changeup, already throwing 6 pitches. Nothing super remarkable about the velocity or the spin. But I'm guessing what the Twins saw was like really well-developed arsenal and a good platform for someone who was going to be a later round pick. Like, you can probably abandon 2 of those pitches at some point and work on honing the rest and making them more effective. 15th round, Reed Mooring did not debut. 16th round, tell us about Jonathan Stevens, Jeremy, because for a good chunk of time, I was like absolutely so confused by what was going on. Like, who was Jonathan Stevens? Where did he come from? Why couldn't we find out any information on him? What a strange story he ended up being.
Yeah, so he went to Alabama and then didn't pitch for like multiple years. Pitched in the Cape and pitched pretty well. Actually was a Cape Cod League All-Star this year, and then appeared in the All-Star game and then didn't appear after that. And we're like, where's Jonathan Stevens? Where's Jonathan Stevens? And then lo and behold, Jonathan Stevens shows up in Fort Myers and appears in 6 games and throws 13 innings, which is like 13 innings more than he pitched for Alabama in his life. Numbers were rough. So in those 13 innings, he gave up 17 hits, walked 12.
That's not surprising though, right? Like, he's barely pitched in like 3 years. He's like pre-lip almost all over.
Well, I mean, but he hadn't pitched collegiately, but he pitched in the Cape, which is a step up from Fort Myers, right?
Sure.
So had a 2.23 whip and a 6.92 ERA, but he did get a win, which I think he got before pre-lip and also before Dason Hill.
Sure.
If that matters. But yeah, I mean, he struck out 20 guys in 13 innings, and I mean, that was 50% of his outs. So there's some intrigue there.
Yeah.
If it works, great. You have something. If it doesn't, it's a round 16 pick, and I don't remember what his signing bonus was, but you might be able to find that, or Theo has it just at the ready. I was very intrigued by that selection, and I look forward to seeing if it transpires into something bigger, or if it's just we gave it a shot. And the intrigue for me was, we know without a doubt that the Twins have had a very, very good relationship with the Alabama staff.
Definitely.
And so when they took him, it's like, okay, this team is on to something that other teams are not, especially since he hadn't pitched. And then he signs, and then, the rest is history. We just haven't written that yet. Yeah, Theo, what do you got?
His signing bonus was $172,400.
2,400 per slot, slightly.
Yeah.
So it goes into the pool. So I mean, there's certainly something there.
Yep. Next guy, Theo always knows. 17th rounder J.P. Smith II, did debut. He's still just 20 years old. signed for $75,000 out of Sac State. This is an all or nothing power profile. That's what I got. Home run totals in college: as a freshman, 14; as a sophomore, 22; as a junior, 12. We'll take a walk. You're also going to see some swing and miss and some strikeouts there. Again, similar to like a lot of the guys. He did get into 24 games. He held his own okay. 237, 297, 344. Did hit a couple of home runs early on in his time at Fort Myers. But you're taking a real flyer when you're drafting hitters in the 17th round. 18th, 19th, 20th rounders: Jeremy Matthew Dahlquist in the 18th, Matthew Becker in the 19th, and Michael Hilker, who I do believe Hilker may have even gotten into a couple of innings. Possibly
2 innings.
2 innings. Okay. So that's the last 3 to round out the draft class. So I guess like any closing thoughts, guys, you're most excited to see next year. I mean, outside of the obvious, like of course, we're looking forward to all the high octane arms. And your final impressions of the Twins 2025 class.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's early to cast judgment. I like the way that they kind of pieced it all together at the end. I think the night of the draft, neither of us were overly excited with Merrick Houston. But they backed that up with a handful of, or a couple at least, prep hitters, which are fun. Younger arms that are a little more lively than we've seen in the past. And then you build depth. And the reality is like in a draft, you get 1 or 2 guys that hit the majors, like great.
Yep.
You get the weird drafts where you have 5 or 6 guys, and it's like, wow, that was an exceptional draft. Like if you get one above average player out of here, the draft's a success.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think Merrick Houston, the floor on him is, even if he never really figures out how to hit, he's going to make it to the major leagues as a utility glove.
Yeah.
Riley Quick, assuming that he stays healthy, like he's going to be a big league arm. And then if you get any of these guys that are more lotto tickets, so the Youngs, the Elwangers, the Wrights, Matt Barr, Agbayani, like those are 5 pretty much lotto tickets. And if you have any success on that, that's huge. McCombs, I think you could kind of throw into that mix. And Sprock, if Sprock can develop as a catcher when there wasn't really one drafted, that would be a fun little development too. The thing is, it's like the needs are easy to identify because you watch the big league team, and you look at the AAA team, and you're like, wait a second, like how do we supplement Ryan Jeffers if we have Jeffers on the roster with no catchers? And the draft's not going to answer that, right?
Nope.
For with the exception of if you're the Angels and you're just going to put him in the majors, or you have the ability to draft a guy that is just that good. These are not going to be solutions to the current problems, and we've identified those, right? Who's going to play first base? Who's going to play potentially shortstop? How are the corner outfields going to be? What's the rotation going to look like? There's guys, but who's going to be there? And then what the heck are we doing with the bullpen? And who's the second catcher? Like those are big questions that none of these guys are the answers to in 2026, but can certainly be the answers to many of those questions probably in 2028, 2029. That's just a long time to forecast forward.
Yep, I dig it. Guys, I'm most excited for, I think, the power arms, because I guess I appreciate, and we have talked about this quite a bit. 2022, they had the great success with the quartet of college arms, Zebby and Andrew Morris and Corey Lewis and all the guys. That was not followed by more success with pitching arms in quite the same way. And I think this is a more balanced cluster of arms in terms of you have your high velo guys who you want to throw strikes, and you have your strike throwers you want to add velo to. I like having both. And I don't know that they've balanced it in quite the same way as they did this year. I thought that was great. Really excited to see Quentin Young just as a fun development story, just hoping he can hold his head above water. Like, sign me up for Brandon Winokur's season at Fort Myers for Quentin Young now. That would be so fun. And yeah, like you said, just hoping one of these mid to later round pitchers is going to take a step forward and be something interesting. So we'll finish on a question, Jeremy, and then we'll get out of here. So this is from Corey. Did not put out a call for questions, but got one anyway. And he wants to ask about a potential Joe Ryan trade. So here's the gist, because it's kind of a long question. But he says, let's assume they're going to treat Joe Ryan like Luis Ariz and kind of choose to trade him away while there's some high value. It's not necessarily about shedding payroll. The question is, what are you targeting in a trade return for Joe Ryan? For example, are you targeting a young, good position player who is kind of established and is going to put up a 3.5 win season? Are you targeting high-end prospects as part of the return? Are you looking to get back pitchers? And he cited like Boston and like Peyton Tolley as a guy who made his debut at the end of last year. Like, is there a particular design of a trade that you would personally be looking to in dealing Joe Ryan to someone like Boston?
Yeah, I mean that was when you started talking about it, since you didn't put this question on there, so I had no idea where we're coming from, right? I immediately went to the Boston prospects, right? And so the Tolley early pitching,
yeah,
like I would guess that they would target one of those guys to add to this pipeline. I don't know if pipeline's the right word, but I feel like it
shouldn't be.
Something like that, because
people get triggered by that word, man.
But you fit in any, like, you replace Joe Ryan at the top of the rotation with a number of guys that could be ready, right? So is Taj Bradley, is Sim, is Festa, like, are these guys in the rotation? Because if they're not, what are they? Yep. Right? So the more arms that you have at your disposal, the easier those questions are to ask, because you could take, for me, it's David Festa, right? David Festa, if healthy, could be a number 5 starter. David Festa, if healthy, could be a dominant closer, right? And so you kind of level up your guys by putting them in the bullpen, and we've seen that, right? We've seen that with the Louis Varlands of the world. We've seen that with what McGill's doing for the Brewers. Like, he wasn't great for the Twins, but like as a relief pitcher, like you can kind of level up. So if Joe Ryan is going to be traded, I know that the Twins had been, I don't know if Dan Hayes wrote about it, like targeting one of their big league outfielders. That to me just doesn't make sense, because you're kind of auditioning these guys already, right? Yeah. I think Austin Martin passed the audition, maybe not as a full-time guy, but Austin Martin's going to be on the roster next year. Yeah. Matt Wallner's done enough to be on the roster this next year. Maybe Trevor Larnach hasn't. But if you could get a Garcia type, right? So I'm not even going to try to say, the password, Garcia.
Josh Nixon.
Right? Josh Nixon. Is that kind of how it looks? But like, if you can get a guy like that, or, maybe the next level down, if you're getting a higher pitching prospect, or if you want more quality and kind of shoot for the lottery ticket types. Like, I think there's a lot of different ways to go, but I think the draft was kind of a good barometer for how the Twins are going to approach things. It's like, we know what we have, and we know what we have close. So now let's try to supplement that with some higher ceiling players, and see if we can kind of combine these waves. And I think they'll always look to add near major league ready starting pitching depth. And then you look at the deadline, like it was right-handed hitter, right-handed hitting outfielder, right-handed hitting outfielder. So I think they're looking for that. They didn't add, aside from Tait and Jimenez, they didn't add a lot of younger hitters. And they didn't add many older catchers. Like, there's a void there right now, right? So Jeffers, if he's on the roster, is 1A. They've always had a 1B, or at least a high level. I don't know if high level is the right thing, but they've had another option, right?
Yeah.
And so
a platoon partner, a 50-50 split guy.
is that what you're targeting? And I'm not sure, where they go for that. But I think that to me, if they're looking for a major league ready now player, you got to target a catcher. Otherwise, you're targeting depth in the premium positions.
I dig it. Okay. We are past time, so we're going to pause there for tonight. Now, I do want to just quickly reference a couple of things that we didn't get to, that we will come back to. We did not talk about Justin LeBron, who was the overwhelming preferred choice of folks for a 2026 draft prospect. There is a piece on Twin Saley, 2-parter, 8 college hitters at the top of the 2026 draft that I wrote little mini profiles. He's one of those. So check that. Hey, it's not too early, dude. We're gonna have a lottery pick. What do you want? I'm leaning into it this year, and no one can make fun of me, not even you. We did not talk about Justin LeBron or Liam Peterson. We will return to those guys next week. We should also talk about Striker Pence. That is Hunter Pence's nephew, who was a sophomore in high school, throwing at 101, and he was not draft eligible till 2028. We also had people mention to us and ask questions about the Baseball America piece around ranking farm systems by Stuff Plus and Hit Plus, some internal metrics they have, some very interesting Twins related results to break down. So we'll try and return to all of that next week. Thank you guys for checking out this review of the Twins 2025 draft. We'll be back for episode 99 around a week from now. Until then, go Brewers and go anyone in the AL. Check you guys next week.